Chapter 15 of Ruth Fielding of the Red Mill. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sonali Punja. Ruth Fielding of the Red Mill. A Jasper Parlow's Secret by Alice B. Emerson. Chapter 15. In School. Ruth thought it all over, and she came to this conclusion. Uncle Jabez had given his permission, albeit a grumpy one, and she would begin school on Monday. The black cloth dress that was so shabby and would look so odd and poverty-stricken among the frocks of the other girls, for she had watched them going to and from school, and already knew some of them to speak to, would have to be worn, if possible, through the term. Perhaps Uncle Jabez might notice how shabby she looked finally and give her something more appropriate to wear, especially as it had been through him that her other frocks were lost. But it was not an easy thing to face a whole schoolroom full of girls and boys, and most of them strangers to her, looking so dowdish. Ruth's love of pretty things was born in her. She had always taken pride in her appearance, and she felt her shortcomings in this line quicker and more acutely than most girls of her age. She faced the school on Monday morning and found it not so hard as she had supposed. Miss Cramp welcomed her kindly and put her through quite a thorough examination to decide her grade. The Darrowtown schools had been so good that Ruth was able to take a high place in this one, and the teacher seated her among the most advanced of her pupils, although Ruth was younger than some of them. The fact that Ruth was well grounded in the same studies that the scholars at this district school were engaged in made a difficulty for her at start, but she did not know it then. She only knew that Miss Cramp, seating her pupils according to their grade, sent her to an empty seat beside one of the largest girls, Julia Semple. A good many of the girls stared at the newcomer with more than ordinary attention, but Julia immediately turned her back on her new seatmate. Ruth did not, however, give Julia much attention at the time. She was quite as bashful as most girls of her age, and, too, there were many things during the first session to hold her attention. But at recess she found that Julia walked away from her without a word, and that most of the girls who seemed to be in her grade kept aloof, too. As a stranger in the school, the girl from the Red Mill felt no little unhappiness at this evident slight, but she was too proud to show her disappointment. She made friends with the younger girls and was warmly welcomed in their games and pastimes. "Julia's mad at you, you see," one of her new acquaintances confided to Ruth. "Mad at me? What for?" asked the surprised new scholar. "Why, that seat was Rose Ball's. Rosie has gone away to see her sister married, and she is coming back to-morrow. If you hadn't come in to take her place, Rosie would have been let to sit beside Julia again, of course, although, like enough, she's fallen behind the class. Miss Cramp is very strict." "But I didn't know that. I couldn't help it," cried Ruth. "Just the same, Julia says she doesn't like you, and that you're a nobody, that J. Potter has taken you in out of charity, and Julia pretty nearly bosses everything and everybody around this school. Her father, Mr. Semple, you see, is the chairman of the school board." Her plain-spoken friend never realized how much she was hurting Ruth by telling her this. Ruth's pride kept her up, nor would she make further overtures towards friendship with her classmates. She determined during those first few days at the district school that she would do her very best to get ahead and to win the commendation of her teacher. There was a splendid high school at Cheslow, and she learned that Miss Cramp could graduate pupils from her school directly into the Cheslow High. It was possible, the teacher assured her, for Ruth to fit herself for such advancement between that time and the fall term. It seemed as though Ruth could never make her crotchety old uncle love her. As time passed, the loss of his cash box seemed to prey upon the miller's mind more and more. He never spoke of it in the house again. It is doubtful if he spoke of it elsewhere. But the loss of the money increased, were that possible, his moroseness. He often spoke to neither the girl nor Aunt Alvirah from sunrise to sunset. But although Uncle Jabez was so moody and so unkind to her, in the little old woman whose back and bones gave her so much trouble, Ruth found a loving and thoughtful friend. Aunt Alvirah was as troubled at first about Ruth's lack of frocks as the girl was herself. But before Ruth had been attending school a week, she suddenly became very light-hearted upon the question of dress. "Now, don't you fret about it, dearie," said Aunt Alvirah, wagging her head knowingly. "Gals like you has just got to have frocks, and the good Lord knows it, just the same as He knows when a sparrow falls. There will be a way provided. If I can't make you a pretty dress 'cause of my back and my bones, there's them that kin. We'll have Miss Cretia Larkin by the day, and we'll make them."
"But, dear," said Ruth wonderingly, "how will we get the goods and the trimmings and pay Miss Locke for her work?"
"Don't you fret about that. Just you wait and see," declared Aunt Alvirah mysteriously. Ruth knew very well that the old woman had not a penny of her own. Uncle Jabez would never have given her a cent without knowing just what it was for, and haggling over the expenditure then a good deal. To his view, Aunt Alvirah was an object of his charity, too, although for more than 10 years the old woman had kept his house like wax and had saved him the wages of a housekeeper. This very day, on coming home from school, Ruth had met Dr. Davidson coming away from the Red Mill. She thought the red and white mare, that was so spirited and handsome, had been tied to the post in front of the kitchen door, and that the physician must have called upon Aunt Alvirah. "So this is the young lady who wouldn't stop at my house, but went to Sam Curtis's to stay all night," he said, holding in the mare and looking at Ruth. "And you haven't been past the gate with the green eyes since?"
"No, sir," Ruth said timidly. "I have never even been to town."
"No, or you would not have failed to see the Curtises again. At least, I hope you'll see them. Mercy has never ceased talking about you."
"The lame girl, sir?" cried Ruth in wonder. "Why, she spoke awfully unkindly to me, and I thought her mother only thought I would feel bad and wanted to smooth it over when she asked me to come again."
"No," said the doctor seriously, shaking his head. "Nobody knows Mercy like her mother. That's not to be expected. She is a poor, unfortunate, cramp-minded child. I have done what I can for her back. She has spinal trouble. But I can do little for Mercy's twisted and warped mind. She tells me she has cramps in her back and legs, and I tell her she has worse cramps in her mind. Bright. Why, child, she knows more than most grown folks. Reads every book she can hold of. There is scarcely a child in the Cheslow High School who would compete with her for a month in any study she had a mind to take hold of. But," and the doctor shook his head again, "her mind's warped and cramped because of her affliction."
"I pitied her," said Ruth quietly.
"But don't tell her so. Go and see her again, that's all. And mind you, don't come to town without turning in at the gate with the green eyes." And so saying, he let the eager mare out, and she swiftly carried him away. It was after this Aunt Alvirah seemed so confident that a way would be provided for Ruth to get the frocks that she so sadly needed. On the very next day, when Ruth came home from school, she found the little old lady in a flutter of excitement. "Now, Ruthie,"
she whispered. "You mustn't ask too many questions. I will surely tell ye a great secret, child."
"It must be something very nice, Aunt Alviry, or you would never be like this. What is it?"
"Now, Ruthie, you mustn't ask too many questions, I tell you. But to make no secret of it, for secrets I do despise, somebody's made you a present."
"Made me a present?" gasped Ruth.
"Now, careful about questions," warned Aunt Alvirah. "I told you that a way would be provided for you to have frocks. And it is true. You are going to have them."
"Auntie, new frocks?"
"Just as good as new. Every bit as good as new. Somebody that's seen ye, dearie, and knows how badly you want to go to school, and that you need dresses, has given you 3."
"My goodness me!" cried Ruth, clasping her hands. "Not 3?"
"Yes, my dear, and they're just as good as new about. Cretia Lock won't be 2 days fixing them over to fit you. And you won't mind, dearie, if the little girl who wore them before you well, dearie, she won't never want them any more."
"Oh, my dear!" cried Ruth. "3 frocks all at once? And I'm not to ask who gave them to me?"
"That is it. You are not to ask that. I'll get them and show you. Oh, my back, and oh, my bones," the old lady added, starting from her chair and hobbling out of the room. Ruth was so amazed that she hardly knew what her other feelings at the moment might be. But there had sprung into her mind, full-fledged, the suspicion that Dr. Davidson had been the donor of the frocks. Perhaps he had a little girl sometime who had died. Ruth had quite decided, from what Aunt Alvirah said, that the girl who had formerly worn the frocks in question was no longer upon earth. End of chapter 15.